My Tree Insight-Oriented Psychotherapy combines ideas and interventions from psychodynamic psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, existential psychotherapy, and polyvagal theory, and marries them with Buddhist and yogic philosophy. Using these interventions, you will begin to build insight or self-understanding. Along with that, you will cultivate self-love, acceptance, and kindness. The name My Tree is a play on words with the Sanskrit word My Tree. Sanskrit is the ancient language that predates Hindi, the language spoken in India today. Both yoga and Buddhism use Sanskrit. The pronunciation of Maitri, M-A-I-T-R-I, is like my tree, M-Y-T-R-E-E. The concept of Maitri is to bring unconditional loving kindness into the world. Before we can bring Maitri into the world, we must first cultivate it for ourselves. My Tree Insight-Oriented Psychotherapy is a way to build insight and understanding using a variety of techniques of psychotherapy. It is a means of growing universal loving kindness and friendship with the self, unconditionally knowing, loving, and accepting ourselves. Before we even get started talking about a wisdom tree, let's talk about why we need them. We can all agree some situations can elicit responses in each of us that is, well, let's say less than optimal. What's happening between the situation and the less than optimal response? In all cases, there is some sort of an emotional response that triggers the less than optimal response. This cycle can continue for months, years, and decades before we're able to recognize that it's happening and we want to make a change. When we're ready to make a change, the question becomes, how do we change it? And that's what the wisdom tree is all about. First, we need to identify which emotions are causing the less than optimal responses. Then we'll need to learn how to identify these emotions through the physical sensations associated with the emotion, the body language associated with that emotion, and the thoughts we associated with the emotion. Once that's established, we need to start working on how to shift our thoughts that are associated with the emotion. We call this reframing, and much of the time use reframing questions to help ourselves recognize why we are feeling this emotion and then what to do about it. Reframing the thoughts helps us to elicit a new, more positive response to the situation. But these patterns exist for a reason, and there's a likelihood the same patterns happen either in the same or similar situations on repeat. The next step is to learn how to recognize the pattern and begin to prepare ourselves for situations that could elicit difficult emotions and those poor responses to those difficult emotions. I call this prep work self-care, but it isn't the treat yourself type of self-care that you'll see on The Real Housewives. This is setting boundaries or limits for ourselves and shifting our behavior so we're better prepared to manage our triggers. When completed, this workbook will help build a life of control and moderation. The tree is broken down into self-understanding through one's truth, compassion, environment, and community. This workbook presents each of these as activities. My Tree of Wisdom helps you to recognize the physical and emotional triggers for stress responses that fall into the mobilization or fight or flight stage of stress response. It helps you to detect within your own body and mind that you are beginning to feel unsafe and helps you to build a plan for what to do next. This workbook contains several examples of coping skills that you can incorporate into everyday life. The more you practice a helping coping skill, the more likely that skill will be automatically utilized in the mobilization stage of stress. Using healthy coping skills helps keep everyone safe from the pain and suffering associated with impulsive actions. The first activity of truth or satya will help you to understand why you impulsively act in the ways that cause pain and suffering. Often impulsive actions that end up causing pain and suffering are done to alleviate uncomfortable thoughts or feelings. It's essential to recognize when something is coming up that might cause unpleasant thoughts or feelings. Upon honest recognition of situations and emotions, a sense of empowerment develops. The idea is to create a sense of understanding that moves into compassion. Compassion, or karuna, is understanding the distress and moving towards healthier options. If someone has learned adaptive coping skills, they will automatically engage in healthier behaviors when feeling stressed. But those who have not learned or habituated healthy coping skills will react impulsively using poor coping strategies. Compassion includes understanding and acceptance. Regardless of how much insight a person has, there will be times we have trouble detecting what is happening. In these cases, we need to prepare our environment by identifying things and places that can evoke uncomfortable feelings and implement rules for behavior that will help us remain on the true path. The next section of the Tree of Wisdom focuses on the external environment. This section helps to identify external triggers and set a plan to control those triggers. Finally, if compassion for the self is not present, then compassion can be found in an external community of support, known in yoga and Buddhism as a sangha. Upon completion of the Tree of Wisdom, you can share it with your sangha. These are supportive people who can provide distraction support and emergency relief. The idea for building a Tree of Wisdom came from someone seeking help for agoraphobia and suicidal thoughts. Her anxiety was so intense that she was afraid to get the mail out of her mailbox. She felt alone and isolated, trapped in her pain. She lived with her two sons, whom she believed hated her and wished her dead. She began to think her late mother was haunting her home due to unresolved anger. She would call the therapy office sometimes several times per day, crying that she wanted to die and that nobody loves her. The clinical team, of which I was a part of, decided it was time for her to take control and began working with her on a plan, like the one you are working on right now. In it, this woman noted that what she tends to do when she's starting to feel bad, and she indicated that watching the show Modern Family helped her to feel better. She shared her plan with her sons by putting it on the refrigerator, and afterwards, they went out and bought her every Modern Family DVD that they could find. Then, whenever she looked like she was having difficulty, her sons would say, "Come on, Mom, let's watch Modern Family." This patient learned how to take control of her emotions and reinforce, even though it doesn't always feel like it, her sons love her very much.